So I'm the CEO of PacketFabric, and we are an agile cloud core. And we've been working with the media and entertainment industry, not only on get to cloud, but how to get to multi-cloud and how to build out multi-cloud workflows and have a really big network that's fully redundant, low latency. I'll tell you all more about it later. But we are a real-time on-demand network, and we're focusing on media and entertainment and trying to get the studio in cloud and cloud-based rendering and all that fun stuff that we're about to talk about our reality, and make it faster, easier, cheaper. So Canning, over to you.
I love it.
Faster, bigger, better, stronger. That's
all our buildings. Anyways.
Hey, I'm John Canning. Thanks for having me, team. I work at a company called Digital Domain, which is a visual effects firm, and been in the business for quite some time. My job there is dealing with all the things that are not film and television and commercials, but dealing with the new media stuff, which is a whole bag of digital humans and XR and hologram, not holograms. But also just working with teams that are doing commercials and video games, and God, there's a whole bag of stuff. But yeah, I think it's ranting about what we all want, what we need. If COVID's taught us anything, is one thing is how to work from home and all the frustrations therein.
So
is
true.
this really John Canning, or is it a digital fake? We'll have to figure it out by the end of this talk.
Exactly. Is this the real
right.
John Canning? I love it.
We perform imperfections.
Indeed, indeed. All right, so let's get started, and let's start really high level. I've talked a lot in the last 7 months about scale, optimizing our industry for scale. And right now, like, we're in like a perfect storm, right? I mean, everybody is so frantic. There's so much work going on just because of demand, knowing that as we emerge from this, we're going to be busier than we've ever been as an industry. But I'm wondering if we could talk about some of those elements, which is, look, we got supply chain and hardware issues, right? We got various quality control and various workflows. The idea also of emerging technology speaks to scale as well, because I think, part of this is expanding and modeling ourselves after other industries that do this maybe with a lot smaller file sizes and less creativity, but they do it effectively in terms of remote and cloud. So let's just start there and say, what are, and Dave, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts around where we're going from this huge need that's out there that really just presented itself in the pandemic? I don't think we all thought in January of 2020, like, oh yeah, it's all going to be, insane in another 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And it certainly has become that. So I think that's a good place for us just to start for the macro of speed, scale, and growth.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to re-summarize what you just said, Guy, which is that it is not smart to base a business on large-scale commoditized capabilities. Like, don't do that. And another way of saying that is, friends don't let friends build data centers. And so I say this because, look, all the scale that the industry is trying to get after, of course, is a scale of all that computational GPU storage, data motion power that is available out there, but it's got to be frictionless. One thing that you didn't mention, Guy, is the scale of employees that everybody's working towards. They are all over the planet, and that's been a theme that we've talked about over the last couple of years or so. The remote work is a very interesting twist of this, but there's very little difference between remote work and wherever we may be in the globe and having entire workforces or shops that folks are picking up to do part of that workflow somewhere else on the planet. And this now is leading towards almost the anti-DIY. And I say that because if you're doing it yourself versus working with those who do it all day, every day in their niche, and I'm in one niche of networking and agile cloud core, not the niche of VFX or other creative sides of this. But I've been working in the media and entertainment industry as a technologist, really trying to make things frictionless. That is the key to getting access to all of the resources that are available, not only just in one cloud, but in the necessary multiple clouds, because we are at a point where there's certain tools in certain clouds or independent clouds, and therefore it's all about data motion and data motion to the locations where the VFX shop or the employees are located. And yes, they can be at home too, but again, it's just another geography. So how can that be, the friction be reduced by making it real-time on demand, again, whether it's compute, GPUs, storage, or network? How can that be frictionless only for the duration of the project that's necessary, or for the duration of the sub-project that one particular shop or set of employees is working on? And then for that big scale conversation, and Canning, I want to go back and forth with you on this, is, look, we're now to the point where regardless of the type of content, but if it's long format content, you're talking about global scale rendering farms being necessary to render this content that we're talking about, particularly with the insatiable demand for content that you teased on, Guy. So how is technology and the creative side going to come together where you're not building a data center, you're not doing it yourself, and you're actually getting what you need out of these giant pools of resources that are available that will meet the scaling demands that you just described, Guy? So Canning, over to you.
Here, it's on fire. You take it. No, one of the things, and coming from a VFX business, but just looking at the creative business, is we have to work with clients, right? You don't do anything in isolation. And there's a couple of points to that. Is the multi-cloud is emerging as a sort of an undeniable issue, because if you have clients who are working with different cloud solutions, then you have to be able to go in and around those, right? Or they may have mandated, we're going to be doing work on this particular solution. And some of that comes down to issues of security, right? And that's I think the biggest concern a lot of folks are having is, we've worked with clients in the past where they want air gaps, and, black curtains on the door that people go in there, and you're like, well, how does that work now if your employees are remote, or, we're moving files back and forth and on a constant basis? How do you protect that? How do you secure that? How do you potentially isolate that or seemingly isolate it? The other issue for a company like Digital Domain is it's the migration or the leverage of cloud. When, if friends don't let friends build data centers. The next part of that is, what do you do with a friend that already has a data center? And has sunk cost into that. And I just started looking at some of the numbers across the board. If you own some of that, it's still sometimes cheaper than turning an artist loose on a cloud system and letting them go roaring along. But it's necessary, and we see that. And so then there's the challenges that I think we're all looking at is, if you've got infrastructure, how do you marry that infrastructure with cloud-based infrastructure in a seamless, and I think the word frictionless is perfect, because there's one level of that. This morning I literally was listening to one of our VFX suits who was a little nervous about this because he's testing out a set of virtual machines, and he's like, I actually was tense because I walked away for a half an hour and realized I was burning minutes. Right? And he's like, and I'm not the money guy, but is that okay? How do we make sure that artists aren't, like, they're already tense people sometimes. So how do you make them not more tense by saying, guess what? Every minute you do something, it's ching, ching, ching. So I think, there's frictionless from a technology standpoint, and then the business aspect of this, everybody's trying to catch up to, right? It's how do I know what the right price points are for doing this sort of thing, and, control those costs, because it's a different equation.
Well, that's part of the irony of this situation, right? Because we want to lower cost and TCO, but we're also accommodating all these crazy, when you say this various clouds, I usually say, all right, it's a little ecosystem, right? Because you're building an ecosystem basically for almost every product, because you're talking to so many different file formats, different clouds, et cetera. But that idea where those ecosystems are just expanding. The Internet of Things of how we are making movies has been growing exponentially over the last 6-12 months, and it doesn't seem like anything's going to stop. I mean, that's the other thing, Dave, when you think about this, is like, what a challenge. Like, oh, okay, so you want us to grow, go to the moon, but you want to save money doing it. It's weird, right? I don't think we've been in this situation before.
We haven't, but thankfully there is and there are technologies that do allow John and others to actually use their hybrid cloud. And what I mean by hybrid is that, and what I said before is friends don't let friends build data centers. I mean like on-prem, like don't stack bricks and mortar, because there are data center operators out there that you build your private data center, but you build it in somebody else's facility. And that is for a very secure, very specific job, and Digital Domain's doing it well, but you also have needs to get to different public clouds. Now, what makes things different is that if you take the business model and turn it upside down. Now, I'll speak from the networking side. Look, you already get CPU, GPU, and storage by the drink. So where's my networking by the drink? So if for example, you need the option of, I need to get this giant file from here to there, and therefore I only need this amount of bandwidth for a certain period of time. I want to pay for it like I pay for CPU and GPU. Yes, John is correct that we need to have scalable also means predictable. And that was something that we didn't tease on when we started off with, whether it's predictability of billing, or it's predictability of latency, or predictability of performance, or availability, or security. Those two things become key. Now, on the frictionless side, the business model that needs to be turned upside down is that you have to nail up either big circuits or big pools of CPU for long periods of time, whether you use it or not. That business model is well understood by developers who are, again, getting a certain number of virtual machines, containers, or whatever the case may be out of a public cloud. But at the same time, it needs to be there all across the technology board. And applications and application performance needs to be there too. So as we take a couple steps forward, we're going to see the licensing of the tools and the apps, the CPU, GPU, storage, and network, and the ability to get anywhere you want to go. So for example, a lot of the projects, whether in Atlanta, Vancouver, traditional LA, or anywhere else on the globe, and I just picked a few of these places, the creative side really shouldn't care on what they're trying to do, where they can do it, where they need to do it, and the technology barriers do need to, dissolve, and it needs to eventually get to that frictionless support of those needs, but also a predictable billing. So, how can that actually come together? Well, there are new groups of system integrators that are actually putting together where there's going to be predictable billing based upon the bundle that pull this stuff together. There have always been system integrators who are providing different solutions in the industry. It's just those solutions are now fundamentally different than what we saw before. And we know that because a lot of the tools, whether they're for broadcast or long format, are now appearing in one cloud or another. And that becomes the key part. And John, maybe you can riff on this a bit. That notion of the tools are available in one cloud or another, but they're not available in all. And so therefore, it's necessarily a multi-cloud workflow, taking Canning's hybrid environment of he's already got data center resources in one cloud and needs to expand into another. That's just the norm. And the reason why this is kind of, although it sounds fairly glib and cliche, Guy, the reason why this is important is that media and entertainment is at the front of the bow wave of fundamentally necessitating multi-cloud workflows for everything you do and everything that's done. And it's very different than what technologists were talking in the past, which was either build a hybrid cloud, which is work in a private data center operator in addition to my on-prem, or the ever famous just get to public cloud. Well, these cause lock, and these cause very specific architectural lock that is part of that scaling equation, as well as part of that predictability equation that, as a technologist, I'm trying to overcome. And Canning's back. So that's good news.
Yeah. So sorry about that. God love the Zooms and the internet. I was there, and then I was gone.
Tighter shot and clearer picture, so it's a +1 on the new camp, John.
Oh, thank you. Yes, rapidly switching devices. Thinking about the tools and just going through this is where we look at the challenges of the tools and things like that, and again working in a cloud structure is when you have an established pipeline, custom tools, artists that are used to working with certain scripts, and it's how does that migrate, and how does that support happen, so that again, when they just log into a machine, they're used to, they've got the tool sets they're working with, they got the plugins they're used to. Stupid things like licenses, right? And I think the industry is still a work in progress on licenses, and a lot of the system folks you'll talk to are like, great, we'll host it, but you need licenses. So then there's the connection to a license server. So it's the mid-size organizations that I think have a challenge. Really small operations potentially have a much more agile ability. Then you move into the ability to support that. So, do you have an IT organization? How busy is the IT organization? Does the IT organization need to get involved in getting folks up and running? Is it something that they can set up and then be self-managed through producers or program managers? And that's the next step. As you say, that they're starting to develop out the portals for the billing and things like that. But it's also just that setup. It's the ability to have the custom configurations, because and the licenses is an interesting one, because the industry wants to charge, obviously, when software developers build software and be able to charge for it and things like that. But then it's the license migration, availability, and tools availability.
So John, I got a question for you, leverage off that. Sorry, Guy.
Oh, please.
You're a lover of many clouds. You are, polyamorous with your love of clouds, I guess. And not going too far on that thread, John, I promise. You've got to then, with the tools, move the data with it. How are you, as a VFX, and what is Digital Domain doing about the data motion problem and the notion of unpredictable egress charges? I know you hate being locked into one particular environment or another because of either the lack of tools or cost or capabilities or locations, but is that the next big concern, which is data motion with my application flows? Yeah, I mean, there's data motion, but there's the just archiving aspect of it. I mean, just simply making sure when a project, because part of our business is, you find you do the projects, you archive the project, and then somebody will come back 6 months from then and go, oh, we need to get access to that, or things like that. So having that, and then being nimble enough to be able to go unarchive a project, start working on it again, but like I said, we had a project that was off pipe, and it was set up real quick and everything like that. Sadly, I had some producer driving around, shuttling hard drives, but because it was like, oh, we need to make sure we get from that artist what was on their machine, because we need to make sure it's archived. So I think that is certainly a problem that we're struggling with, because it's the data migration, but it's the data archiving. And again, if we're working, depending on the client, the studio, they may have data in their cloud at that point that we need to work with or push to. And how do we do that? On whose dime, and how do we do it in a cost-effective manner?
It's so hard because we're really at the forefront. Yes, we've been working in digital for however many decades, right? With those first VFX shots that were introduced in theatrical. But the reality is we're the first class that's really having to deal with this. Like if I had talked to you 5 years ago and said, hey, we're going to have this big challenge of multi-hybrid environments, it's almost as though the situation emerges and then you solve it in that time. But it's like, these are the first time we're solving some of these things. Do you guys lean on each other? Do you go to outside experts? Is it just, sitting around the table, scratching and thinking and being like, what if we did it this way? Can we talk a little bit about that process as pioneers in terms of these new workflows? I mean, and we can say private, hybrid, public, and talk about those challenges around that. But I just always look at this like the fascinating conversations you all must be having just to get the job done. knowing all the options it's got to be mind-blowing. So I wonder if you guys can riff a little bit on that, and ultimately working to this cost-effective multi-cloud ecosystem is really what that end prize is. But sure, along the way, I'm sure it takes turns here and there, just because out of necessity, like, oh, this, like you said, we're driving around picking up drives and doing laptops because we need to do that as part of our workflow. So I don't know if you all can just chit chat about that. It certainly has got to be something that you're challenged with almost every day, I can imagine.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I was going to say, the conversation in like in DD and I've had this conversation with other folks and other entities, and we literally are like, people are calling it's phone a friend, and while it's also, you're talking to your competitors, they're frenemies, but people are checking what others are doing, and it's like, yeah, you need interconnect. Who did I call? Call Dave and Lisa and said, what do we do about this? It's and talking with, again, being the polyamorous person that I am, it's actually pushing on different partners, because there isn't necessarily one solution that is the clear, obvious, oh well, that's just it, and pushing on the different partners to effectively step up, right? Part of that, because you can't find just the one right solution necessarily for all problems, is pushing on partners and vendors to fix the problems and to step up. And I think that's the interesting thing right now is, people were doing this before, Guy. But the issue is some of it was the nice to have, not the need to have. And if nothing else in the last year, is it thrust a lot of people into the need to have. And that changed the proposition.
And Dave, your experience also probably in other industries as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, you bet. The one thing about the media and entertainment industry that's actually different than some of the other industries is that because the projects are bounded to a certain degree, but the resources are not, you're able to experiment, and the experiment proof of concepts that are being built in parallel. So what's really become to the forefront now internationally as well as in North America, of course, are effectively studios for rent. And they're completely full, as well as just the studios the production houses that own their own studios. These allow for quite a bit of parallel experimentation. And this can be, not only on the connectivity and the apps, but of course on the cameras and what's being built for the film or for the content. That has allowed us to come together as an industry and actually learn from each other, because we all are trying different variants on a theme. Again, whether it's a hybrid architecture using owned resources in a private data center or on-prem resources, but then others are trying this cloud in this location and then trying to string together or build multi-cloud workflows. Sorry, that's a more professional way to say it. Between these different locations, these different geographic areas. And so we are all learning from each other, including how to do these cloud scale rendering jobs and how to do these cloud scale effects creation jobs, and understanding the capabilities, capacities of those different clouds. Now, as John said, look, different clouds are absolutely willing to do these different experiments with us to actually test out and try and understand the capability of their facilities as well. So the difference between M&E is the experimentation, as well as, for a bounded project. From other industries, I'm not saying there's any less experimentation, it's actually just different, because many of those companies actually believe that some of the intellectual property of their businesses is actually in owning and operating this infrastructure. In media and entertainment, just speaking generically, the need to own, manage, operate certain types of equipment, being compute, storage, and network, is not part and parcel or requirement of the industry. Obviously, the intellectual property is in different parts of it. So that allows, whether it's PacketFabric, to partner with many other folks to actually step in and show that, in fact, real-time on-demand infrastructure orchestrated together amongst partners that is the way it's evolving, because the partnerships end up becoming repeatable. They end up repeatable not only from a technology point of view, but even from that business building perspective. And so we're experimenting on, all dimensions at the same time.
All right, so think in the future. I know we only have a few minutes left. Think in the future, right? All right, we're in this multi-cloud ecosystem world where people are, happy, productive, meeting their deadlines and whatnot. But what does this really mean? What's the ripple effect here? How are these? Does this mean that the big studios will just be creating more and more content in a shorter amount of time? What are we looking at in terms of future, right? How do the economics factor into this from an output perspective?
John, why don't you take that first? Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah. So I was going to. Look, I mean,
more VFX for everyone.
Well, it's more. That's what's going on right now, and there is no slowdown. What it's meaning is, shops are, we work with different folks. It's working with independent contractors. It's just expanding where you can pull resources from, how you can collaborate with partners, and the speed to which we have to do it, right? And that right now the business is just exploding. More television was being made than ever before the pandemic. Slowed down. Now it's roaring back. But it's whether it's television, whether it's games, movies, all of those things, we're just accelerating that. It's like, I can equate it to you trying to hire people today. That's the scarcity, right? Like, it's getting bodies to do work, because everybody is getting back to work. Everybody is cranking, and that speed and pace will just increase. So it's how do we have an infrastructure to deal with it, really?
Yep.
Well, that's a bold vision, Canning. Let's see if that plays out. But in fact, I'm going to agree with John, but take it one step further, which is access to the talent, access to new locations on the planet to be able to create, produce that content. That's what we're going to see more of. And it will happen faster, because the whole point where you started this, guy, is exactly I think, a good place to end, which is to scale the industry means that more people can get involved, because there is talent out there in many parts of the world that we couldn't get to. There's resources out, the data center cloud resources now are available on a global scale. This was not possible in the past, and the ease of data motion, ease of connectivity, ease of the tools is at its, it's the best it's ever been in time. It's only going to get better from the way that we've described over the last 30 minutes or so, but nonetheless, better, faster, more entertaining, lower cost content, because the demand is insatiable, and we don't want to slow this down at all, and we all want better content. So thankfully, technology is helping us reach more talent, or the industry helping reach more talent, as well as the capability and capacity that's necessary on the technology and human front that John described.